If you recognize that this is important and that there's a need and a desire to be a purpose-driven company, one, because you want to benefit your community, but also you recognize all the benefits it's going to bring to your business down the road, to not be intimidated by not having budget or things like that. There are so many creative ways that you can give back to the community. Don't prescribe to that myth that you have to be this like Fortune 500 company or, part of the 1% to make a difference. There's so many ways that each of us can do it on a daily basis.
Welcome to the Worthy for 30 podcast. I am your host, Eric Tash. Join us as we delve into the world of impactful business leaders who are setting the bar high. Worthy for 30 carefully curates its guests, engaging with business trailblazers who embody the ethos of doing good while doing well. In each episode, we extract actionable tips and wisdom from these visionaries, offering you a blueprint to merge success with social impact. Ready to elevate your business game? Let's dive in and learn how to do good while thriving. Worthy for 30, where purpose meets profit. The 41st episode of the Worthy for 30 podcast. I am your host, Eric Tash. The Worthy for 30 podcast is where we delve and uncover insights from remarkable leaders who are doing good while doing well. Today, we're honored to have Jessica Sloan, the executive director of Raised by Us. Joining us at Raised by Us, their mission is clear: to unlock the collective power of the workplace to do good. By amplifying the social impact of purpose-driven companies, they empower employees to be more than just workers. They become dreamers and change makers. In this episode and conversation, Jessica will share insights into how companies can harness their employees' energy to embrace social responsibility, ultimately elevating every aspect of their business. Join us as we explore the ripple effects of doing good in the workplace and why it's crucial for the success of modern businesses. Tune in. So, Jessica, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So, we'd just love to start off by saying, how did you get to Raised by Us? We'd love to understand your career journey to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think like most people, I've had a windy one. And if I looked at my 18-year-old self, I'm not sure I would have seen myself doing this, but in retrospect, it kind of all makes sense. So I'm a nonprofit diehard. I've worked in the nonprofit industry for, over 3 decades, which is scary to say, in various capacities. But I started off working in mental health, doing direct service work. And I did that in New York for about a decade. And I always say I got this serendipitous opportunity I was looking to do something more and kind of like challenge myself. And I got this serendipitous opportunity to work at a charter school in the South Bronx who was looking for someone to oversee the social emotional work. They had a very specific mission of working with children in the child welfare system. And so they were looking for someone to come in to kind of help oversee that work, think about replication, that sort of thing. But they were also looking for someone to do fundraising and communications and board relations and kind of community engagement. And it seems like a really great opportunity at the time. And so the rest of my career was sort of born from that. I spent the last decade in various capacities helping a lot of youth-focused organizations, anywhere from New York local to international, build out their fundraising and communications initiatives, and working a lot with boards and strategic development, that sort of thing. It was probably almost 4 years ago at the time, I was introduced to Simon, Raised by Us, as founder. And I was really intrigued when I first heard about what the organization was doing. And obviously we'll get to that. Because in the fundraising world, and I'm sure we'll talk a lot about this, especially in the corporate fundraising world, there is oftentimes a gap between the intent that a company and their corporate social responsibility program intends to have, and the actual impact that it has. And so when I heard about Raised by Us working with emerging companies, and at the time, primarily the tech industry, I was super intrigued by the chance to kind of flip the script and what it means to be philanthropic as a company, and really kind of challenge the traditional ways that companies were giving back to their communities and figure out creative ways that folks can give back, support causes that they care about via the workplace, both on the individual level and the employee level. So it kind of combines, I didn't see it at the time, but some of my personal fundraising experience as a head of development in helping companies and their social impact leads, their people leads, whoever it is, we work with a variety of different folks, empower and mobilize their workforce to give back and do good. So it engaged things that I did historically, but it's actually really exciting. And a lot of the work that we do with Raised by Us is we got to be innovative and kind of trailblazers, and we're constantly evolving. This is such a new kind of area. Giving back has always been around, but social impact, as it looks today, is constantly evolving. And so it's really cool to be able to be on the front lines of that and help companies who are purpose-driven and kind of next generation think creatively about how they can impact the communities in which their employees live and work.
No, that's incredible, and there's a lot to unpack there. The first thing you said is intent and impact. Companies have this great intent to do good and give back to the communities they serve, and then there's that delta or the disparity between their intent and action. So for the startup founder, for the CMO, for the owner of a business who wants to do good and wants to be purpose driven, what's the first step they should take in order to again meet intent with impact?
Yeah, that's such a good question. There's so many different things that you can do as a company to be like a good partner to your community. And so the first thing that we do in working with any of our clients is to sort of meet them where they're at, right? Figure out what is their end goal. Is it to be, develop a corporate giving strategy and be kind of philanthropic and give back as a company? Is it to empower, mobilize their employees? Is it to create the space to celebrate and honor the lived experiences and passions of their employees? So there's like so many different avenues that you can sort of go to. The number one thing that we, kind of prioritize in working with companies is to whatever it is that you're doing, to build a program that's authentic to you and your company culture, right? In today's world, where it's such a sophisticated world, we have information like at our fingertips. And like, for example, today is International Women's Day. Go women. Yes. And I'm sure you got 100 emails in your inbox from various companies acknowledging the cultural moment and, giving shout outs to women, which is wonderful. Acknowledgement is the first step. But if a company really wants to move a needle on a cause area or, go deep in it, it takes a lot more than sending out an email or posting something on social media. And so, we really want to support companies in their like authentic journeys to give back to their community. And the first thing is like, what's the goal of the program? And then we figure out creative avenues to, obviously bring those goals to fruition. But being authentic and kind of figuring out the different avenues where you can embed good into the culture of the company to make it a sustainable program is going to set you up to be the best partner possible to the causes, the pillars, the nonprofits that the companies are looking to support.
No, absolutely. It's, again, it's the authenticity. It's, and how do you, again, what's the objective? How do you get there? You talk about a cause, like whatever the cause is, let's use, International Women's Day as an important cause. Is that cause coming from an employee or a subset of employees to the top, or is it coming from, say, the chief human HR officer or the president to say, okay, this is an important cause that the company should rally around? Like, just love to understand, like, where does that start?
Yeah, absolutely. So we recommend, and every company, people do it differently, but we see the greatest success when it's a combination of like a top down and a bottoms up approach. So, it is, if there are companies where there's like a very clear alignment with the causes or the organizations that they might want to support and their overall business goals. And in some cases, some companies actually have it embedded in their business model, which is fantastic. Not all companies have a product or a service where that necessarily makes sense, but there might be something that is important to the company or to their employees. And so a combination of sort of figuring out what that is. Sometimes companies will do surveys to kind of figure out what's important to their employees. It could be something as simple as that, looking to employee resource groups to see what they're driving. But if there is sort of a company pillar set, we always say to complement it by building the space for voice and choice amongst your employees. We see the biggest engagement around causes that are personal to employees. And I mean, it makes sense, right? Like if someone asked you to donate to something, you're probably doing it because you care about the person who asked you, or it's a cause that it's important to you, whether it's, affected your life or someone that you love's life. And so we often see in the most rallying around, not a day, not even unfortunately, but not a day like International Women's Day, which might not have personal meaning to you, but we've seen particularly lately, there's been plenty of crises happening in the world, current events, things like that often mobilize people when an employee is affected by something. So we've seen a lot of companies where their colleague might, get diagnosed with a serious illness and there's, rallying around that cause area. So, kind of more of that organic when life is affected is, the thing that seems to facilitate the most impact within a company. But there's also to say that there's a balance sometimes with having, company sort of pillars and things that are important to either the business and or the places where they might work and or the populations that are in their workforce too.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think I may have mentioned this to you when we first connected, Jessica, was when I worked at Buddy Media about 12 years ago. We were at the onset of what is today, Cycle for Survival is this, this juggernaut that's raised over $350 million. And at the time, the co-founders of the company said, as an organization, not just a subset of the employees, as an organization, we're going to rally around this cause, this incredible cause to raise money for rare cancer research in partnership with Memorial Sloan Kettering. Everyone's going to ride, or at least has the opportunity to ride at Equinox to celebrate all the money that we've raised. And at the time, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is like corporate social responsibility before it was CSR. It's thinking about, okay, this is a cause that's personal to the founders.
Yes.
And what's amazing is, whether it's Cycle for Survival or any cause that's important to someone, when you make it big and it comes across as something that's important, that to what you were saying before, the person that you're speaking to is like, wait, this is really important to Jessica. This is really important to Eric. Yeah. I need to get involved. I need to lean in. So it's really incredible that companies are thinking about, what's important to our employees, surveying them, as you said. And again, if they don't have the pillars or if they don't have a product or service that is explicitly giving back to the communities they serve, I think it's what you said. What you said, choice, and what was it?
Voice and choice.
Voice and choice, which I love. Yeah, the rhyme, the voice and choice, which is great to get that buy-in. What are some examples of companies that you've recently worked with that were at that starting point? They're like, hey, Jessica, we want to give back. We know that there are causes that are important to our employees. What do we do? And what's that? Can you describe it, at least at a high level, what that point A is and where they are today?
Yeah, for sure. CSR? Well, I think, what's really interesting about Raised by Us and sort of where we've evolved to today, there's been so many changes in this space. And I think one of the biggest changes from when we first started doing this as really a volunteer-led grassroots movement, like over a decade ago till now, is we've gone through COVID. It's a massive work from home movement, and most companies are distributed workforces globally, right? And so back in the day, in order to engage employees, we would set up shop in a company cafeteria. We would have signs. It would be buzzworthy. People would walk by it. They would drop in. You had the social proof. You had it all, right? And now we're all sitting behind our computers, right? And so, 3 years ago, there was sort of like a pause to say, how do we effectively engage and leverage the generosity and good of employees in the workforce, right? If we don't have as, physically captive of an audience that we used to have. So that was kind of one of the first adjustments that we had to make and that the companies that we work with had to make was to realize that, again, there's sort of this disconnect. We know that people want to do good, right? We know that they want to give back. We know, especially like I think more than 50% of the workforce is millennials and Gen Zs at this point, and they're the most generous generations to ever have existed. Yet only 10% or less of employees actually take advantage of the traditional social impact programs that companies offer. So right there's a gap, right? And that's really like the reason that Raised by Us exists, is to say, we know that there's energy that can be harnessed within the workplace. We know that companies are committed to standing up these programs, yet we're not seeing the uptake that we would assume, right? Recognizing that we have the most generous generations and companies who are standing up these programs. So, I'll get to sort of some of the examples, but one of the things that we really think about are like the levers that we have to pull to get people to like show up and engage in this sort of distributed Zoom world that we all live in and work in. And it looks a lot different than what it used to before that. So the thing that kind of sets Raised by Us apart from some of our peers is we partner with the companies that we work with on their strategy. So there's like the corporate giving strategy. There's sort of the best practices, the benchmarks that they want to hit to create a program, the foundations of a program. But then it's what are the levers that you're going to have to pull to get people to actually show up and take advantage of it. And so we're really, really focused on building programs and programming that makes giving our three things is easy, accessible, and most importantly to us is fun. Giving is serious. The causes that we're supporting are serious, but that doesn't mean that the bringing people together has to be so sort of boring. Like there's non-traditional ways that you can bring people together. So when we're working with a company, it depends on where they're at. And that's, I think, the thing that excites me the most about the work that we do. We have companies that come to us with sophisticated programs, but they're looking to level up something. They're looking to, engage more employees, to maybe launch a specific program. They want to launch a global volunteer month. They'll bring us on and we'll help them identify the partners, manage all the logistics and try to recruit as many employees as possible to take advantage. There's also the smaller organizations that come to us and want to dip their toe in the social impact pond, but they're not quite sure what that looks like for a 40-person startup. And so they might not be in a position where they're ready potentially for like a whole strategic partnership. And so what we've started doing is meeting companies sort of where they're at. And we have what we call now good events, where a company could bring us on and we'll work with them to have a gamified team building opportunity where people come together. It's really fun. They participate in a bunch of challenges, and basically they're unlocking charitable dollars that the company is standing up. And it's a really cool way to have team building and create like a sense of belonging, to communicate to your employees as a company that we care about the causes you care about, because in these games, the employees are driving where those dollars are going, which is most important when we talk about the voice and choice.
Right.
And then the thing that we think about as a nonprofit is the nonprofit recipients. And the super cool thing about that engagement is that the nonprofits don't have to do anything. They're just receiving a donation because somebody has nominated them. And that's really, when we talk about coaching our partners, one of the main things that we really think about is how they can be the best partner to the nonprofits that they're seeking to support. And the number one way to do that is to figure out what it is that they need. Most often it's dollars, no surprise there. And so what's the most, like the highest return on investment for a nonprofit where they can receive a donation without having to put forth, resources, staff time, et cetera, to then receive the funding or whatever they need to, do their life-changing work.
Yeah, that's incredible. In terms of again pairing the the business with that nonprofit and making it fun and engaging. And you mentioned like team building and collaboration.
Yes.
So of course, it's the metric of, doing good, which is, we can measure it, of course. I imagine there's a correlation between employee happiness and satisfaction with the fact that the company's making a concerted effort to give back and to mobilize and energize employees.
Yes.
That, yes, we're not just here to do a 9 to 5. We're here to do a 9 to 5 or to do a job, but also that job is enabling you to do good at the same time.
Absolutely.
that you're doing work. What sort of feedback have you gotten from those businesses in terms of, some of those things that people don't see? Like, yes, you raised X amount of dollars, you made this impact on nonprofit, but in terms of that collaboration, that employee satisfaction, retention, some of those great metrics that HR departments would love to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we know it's a competitive job market out there, right? Both for employers and employees. And we've seen, over the years that there is less separation between your personal life and your professional life. People want to bring their full self to work, right? So they want to find an employer who is going to reflect their value set, who's going to, like you said, sort of create the space to acknowledge things that are important to me or affecting my life or have affected my life historically and will continue to do. And so, that is, like, we say that people are a company's number one asset, right? They're, you can spend so much time, energy, staffing, resources on recruitment in order to be a competitive employer, both to recruit your talent, but then also to keep them. It's really important to, again, create an authentic space, which is going to allow employees to be their full self to work, feel seen, feel like a sense of belonging, connect both to the company, but also to their peers. And so that's why we put a lot of thought into the programming that we encourage companies to stand up, where it's both benefiting the external community. Obviously, there's impact externally, but it's also, we're really focused on the impact internally as well, and creating moments for employees to connect with each other, to be vulnerable. The coolest thing about these events, some of them that we do, is it gets people talking about things that they care about, whether it's a specific cause or an organization, in a very organic way, where if you were to, maybe have like an icebreaker or something like that, where people were prompted to do that in a more structured setting, it could be really off-putting. Like, people might not raise their hand, they might not, feel comfortable, but you're doing it in this, in the sense of this sort of game and challenge. And so people, we've seen, it allows them to let their guard down a little bit. And the wonderful thing about, for the companies and for us, is we get to learn about all of these local nonprofits doing really great, on the ground work. Sometimes there are larger organizations that we've heard of, but oftentimes people raise their hand and say, I'm involved with this, local youth development organization. We had one employee who was super passionate. It was a very specific nonprofit. I believe they were in California working with kids in soccer. And we did this game, and he nominated this nonprofit, and his team won, and they ended up donating a few $1,000s to this really small org. And for a small organization like that to receive a donation that they're not expecting and had to do no work for, that's massive for them. So it's a very cool way of learning about, the 1.5 million nonprofits that are in the US alone, and to give employees the chance to sort of be advocates for things that are important to them and care about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's democratizing fundraising. It's very similar. I know you and I spoke, I think Grapevine, Emily.
Yes, we shared office space when both of our organizations were in infancy. So
in infancy, and it's incredible. These virtual giving circles where you have like-minded individuals coming together and nominating nonprofits, to donate that aggregated amount of money, makes an outsized impact. Here, it's similar, where you have an employee, they raise their hand, there's a soccer nonprofit, out on the West Coast or Midwest, wherever. It's super important. They're doing incredible work. And that employee makes the case, and perhaps what you're saying, there's gamification, there's some competition, and that amount of money that's raised is now going to the nonprofit. Because my question was going to be, Jessica, if I'm a nonprofit listening to our conversation, my first question is like, okay, how can I get in front of these companies that are nominating nonprofits?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and we get that question a lot. For us, I mean, we are open and eager to connect and learn. We don't have a formal process. We do have a rubric. Oftentimes that, like, one of the number one questions that we get on the company side, I'll address it from that way, is a lot of times companies will come to us and they want suggestions or help identifying organizations that they can support. And so there's things that, as a nonprofit ourselves that we look for, if it's a like beneficiary serving organization, we want to make sure that their staff and that their board are reflective of the communities that they're serving. Obviously, we check their financials and their transparency and all that. But really, one of the things that like the ethos of Raised by Us is that we help to raise up and amplify small organizations who might not have the $1 million marketing budgets for, to be a household recognized name. And so we do a lot of research in finding them. Sometimes companies are very specific about what they're looking to support, this location, this cause area, this size organization. And so my team is like diligent about doing research and kind of figuring out that rubric. But oftentimes we meet people just through networking, or like people raise their hand and nominate an organization, and we kind of put that into our database. And so in the future, when someone says to us, we want to support X, Y, and Z, that we're able to sort of figure that out and make connections that way. But right now it is very organic. But if any nonprofits are listening, give us a shout out. We're always eager to hear about the amazing work that you're doing, and try to be, somewhat of matchmakers and connecting you to corporate groups who are looking to support those areas.
Right, absolutely. Because I'm thinking, you said 1.5 million nonprofits in the U.S.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
So what? And
that's not including nonprofits that are fiscally sponsored, but that's a whole other conversation. But
Okay, gotcha. So of that 1.5 million nonprofits, and I imagine there as we're talking, many more are being founded. I imagine a very small percentage of those nonprofits have a lot of money.
Exactly.
So they are looking to organizations, through Raised by Us or other conduits, to be connected to individual employees or employers where they could be, considered,
Yes.
as a nonprofit to donate to.
Absolutely. And when we're building out programs too, like one of the things that we do a lot of coaching on is it's great to make a one-time donation, but you and I have talked about like how to embed kind of doing good into a business model.
Sure.
Like there's something really powerful about being able to develop a long lasting relationship with with a nonprofit organization, so that they have, reliable income. They have access to employees who can become advocates and supporters. Today, it's really not just about, Raised by Us is really like, we were founded on like, our North Star is raising or directing charitable dollars to nonprofits. But in today's world, amplification and advocacy is so important, getting the word out. Again, there's so many organizations doing really great work. And so, there's lots of different ways that employees and companies can champion organizations that they're partnering with, in addition to obviously providing the critical funds, which enables the organizations to do their work. But there's many different avenues for them to, be like really great partners and good citizens in their communities.
I want to talk about that, but just but before that, what we're touching on is purpose, brand purpose. And you see it, you're on the front lines, you and your team are on the front lines. So when a company wants to be purpose driven or purposeful, even before they start thinking about, okay, how do we mobilize employees to give back to specific nonprofits? What would be your advice to that organization, again, that wants to be purpose driven?
Yeah. It really depends on a lot of factors. We always say you can't boil the ocean, right? So to start with one thing that you might want to kick off, whether that is like an open matching program where, again, your employees are making donations and the company's putting out their dollars to match that, whether that's a company, making a donation. It really depends on internal resources. Oftentimes, particularly how we started, we work with emerging companies who don't have a dedicated CSR person or team. And that was actually why we were founded. Our founder, Simon and Danny, they were young professionals in the tech industry. And Simon was, I think it was his first role out of college. And he was at this company that would gather in a warehouse. And there was 500 of them. And he looked around the room, and he had always been philanthropic. And, he had this thought of, if everyone gave $10, that would actually be a lot of money that we would raise if we were to donate it to a certain cause. And that's actually how Raised by Us was born. It's this idea that you give micro or small dollar donations, and the collective impact really does add up. And so we meet companies where they're at, and trying to figure out, again, sort of like, what is the first thing that they might want to start with. And so a company might bring us on to add a social good or social impact element to their company annual meeting or a leadership retreat or something like that. That might be how they sort of dip the toe in the water to see if, one, there's internal appetite, and two, what are causes that people care about, or this is an opportunity for us to give back. And then as that sort of grows, our recommendation is that, again, to embed doing good into the company culture, it's going to take a lot more than just doing like a one-time annual event. And so we really help them think through both the strategy, the employee facing, and then the external facing sort of programming and opportunities that they can create to support their communities.
Excellent. So again, it's soup to nuts. Like you're helping them through from ideation to actual execution.
Yeah.
And what you're mentioning about year round, and not just thinking about giving money to a nonprofit once and then hi, I'm company ABC and nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Here's a check. We'll see you next year, or maybe we'll talk down the road. What are some of those examples of a company that has developed a relationship or a longstanding relationship with a nonprofit? Like, what does that look like outside of just donating money?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have some company partners that, again, it's kind of figuring out, in addition to making, like, what are their resources? And so we have some companies that have products that they're able to donate, something that a nonprofit would benefit from. More and more, we're seeing that, like, the last 2 years there's like a massive uprise in volunteering, again, in addition to donating. And so again, let's look at a company's number one asset, their people. You have a wide range of employees with various skill sets that nonprofits can really benefit from. And so we help a lot of our organizations figure out what are the skills that their employees have, and then make connections to nonprofits who might need it. There's board service. Nonprofits are required to have boards, and they're often looking for, young professionals who can help amplify their voice. And so really high impact volunteering, making, personal donations, and then company giving, product donations. And then we have, I'm trying not to be too specific because but we have some companies who have, for example, like really solid business models that support giving back. Lemonade is one of our companies, and they, are massively generous through their business. They have their insurance company, and they have, a group of nonprofits that they support year over year. They give away millions of dollars from their like insurance side of their company. And what we've sort of been helping them do is, how can we create a holistic give back program that benefits these nonprofits through like our business model, the actual work that we're doing, and like the insurance claims or lack of claims. But how can we bring those nonprofits into our internal community, our employees, and create other pathways to support them in addition to the dollars? And so we've been helping them build out a volunteer program, which is bringing in a select, group of these nonprofits, figuring out, saying to the nonprofits, and this is the number one thing that we encourage companies to do, ask your nonprofit partners what they need, don't assume. And so, we're working with them to figure out, is it skill-based volunteering? Is it, are you a youth serving shelter that needs kits? And so we're going to do kit packing and things like that. And so really kind of figuring out, again, it's like all about that matchmaking, but what is the nonprofit? What does the community need? How can we bring that in and make this a holistic program where the business is supporting these pillars and these organizations? And now we're creating the opportunity for our employees to do the same.
Wow, that's that is amazing. What I was going to say with Lemonade, do you own your apartment or do you rent?
I rent. Yeah.
Rent. Okay. Because I was going to ask, like, does Lemonade do renters insurance or
They
just
do.
homeowners?
But one of the fun things, and this sort of like just gives a flavor of like who we are as an organization, the type of programming that we stand up. So they also do pet insurance. And so
Yes.
I think it was our first year partnership, we wanted to engage their employees around something that the business supports, but also they have like multiple employee resource groups for their animal lovers internally. And so we actually put on a employee pet fashion show where we raised money for animal welfare organizations that both Lemonade already is supporting, and then also some that were nominated for their employees. And it was, again, a really fun way to bring people together to celebrate causes that are near and dear to the employees' hearts. It's important and, associated with obviously Lemonade's business model, but to do it in like a really fun, unexpected way. And it was, an absolute blast. It was one of the favorite things that we've done, certainly.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
And what's incredible to what you're saying is just like the overlap of the concentric circles. You have, it's Lemonade, it's their business, pet insurance, it's giving back, and then you have employees, and then you have nonprofits. It's just like, it's like magic.
Yeah.
In one place.
And again, it's sort of pulling on the like making giving easy, accessible, and fun. You create an opportunity for people to show up, like you remove the barriers. All they have to do is show up. It's accessible. It's something that who doesn't want to go to a pet fashion show? And it's fun and it's creative and it's, a non-traditional way, again, to give back and support our communities by raising, these micro donations and small dollar donations through employee generosity.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, part of the, it's funny, like I have conversations with yourself and some other nonprofit leaders or people who are working with charities, and not surprisingly, yes, there are a lot of nonprofits that are sprouting up and charities are sprouting up. But also as a direct, unfortunately, inverse correlation is charitable giving is going down year over
Absolutely.
year.
Yep.
So, and I think part of it, again, correlation is not causation, but part of it, I believe, to what you're saying, is lack of information. Where do I go? I want to give back. I want to donate. Maybe I want to give back, but it's not dollars. To what you're saying, it's volunteer work. Like, how can I get involved? Can you speak to like how people are you mentioned millennials and Gen Z, how their perception of charitable giving and giving back is?
Yeah, absolutely. Like the first thing that we do is debunk the myth that you have to be, like an uber wealthy person to make a difference in the world. Like we know that that's just not the case. There's so much giving that happens outside of the workplace. That's grassroots and micro donations. And so we want to create the space to, again, meet people where they're at. And every dollar really does count. But one of the things that we always talk about with our partners, our employees, is acknowledging that I say that giving back is like love languages. Not everybody wants to do things the same way. I personally, let's just say I have, a lot going on at home. I'm busy with work. I might not have the time to volunteer, or I might be more introverted where going out to a soup kitchen and handing out meals is not going to like fit with my personality. And so I might not do it if that was the only opportunity presented to me. I might prefer to make a donation, and that's going to kind of fill my cup and make me feel like I'm making a difference. And so we always say to create like multiple avenues for people to get involved, whether it's, making donations, and again, welcoming any amount and making people feel like making them understand that they can make a difference with, whatever generosity means to them, whether it's volunteering, whether it's other acts of service. We've also seen like a massive uprising and kind of acknowledging other acts of service and things that you can do in the community, which move the needle in cause areas. So really having kind of, again, like a holistic program that provides multiple avenues for people to give back. That's one of the number one reason, to your point, is either not knowing about a program existing or not having time to take advantage of it. And so again, we want to keep it easy. We want to remove any barriers that might exist that would prevent employees from like signing up or showing up. And also not assume that, they would prefer doing this or that, but to give multiple opportunities for them to give back to, we always say, causes that are meaningful to them, but also in ways that are personally meaningful to them is even more important than that.
Right. It's again giving choice.
Exactly.
Voice and choice.
Exactly.
Yes, that's incredible. And one thing that I also saw, like as I was getting prepared for this conversation, is that again, Raised by Us was founded from two tech entrepreneurs, two tech founders, and there's some tech luminaries that I saw that are involved with Raised by Us.
Yes.
Gary Vee and Andy Dunn. I know. I believe mental health is an important cause for Andy Dunn.
Yes, very much so.
So how what's their involvement? Like how I can imagine. I think I know how Andy Dunn's involved, but would love to understand like how Gary Vee, for the the Gary Vee fans who are listening.
Yeah, for sure. So we have, we're incredibly lucky to have a wonderful board who are our leaders. And so like most nonprofit boards, our group is really responsible for setting like the strategic direction of the organization. Gary and Andy and Ben and, some of our wonderful board members have been involved since the very beginning. And so they are both supporters and champions and just making connections. Our main as a nonprofit ourselves, we're a little bit non-traditional in that our revenue doesn't come mostly from fundraising like the nonprofits that we're supporting, but it's from earned revenue. And so having access to folks like Gary and Andy and Ben, who are so wonderfully connected in the emerging venture world, to help get Raised by Us on the radar, and also the companies that they're working with who are interested in being purpose-driven and kind of, meeting the demands of this next generation are able to make introductions to us as well. So it's a wonderful marriage, if you will, of helping promote good in this very close-knit but also widespread industry. So they're wonderful, and we wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for their support.
Right. No, I totally get that, because I think you guys have like a big auction, right, at the end of the year, like around the holidays.
We did this. We've done it. We did this year. We had our auction spectacular, which we called it, and we had an in-person gala the year before, and we did a lot of in-person auctions and sort of things prior to COVID. So last year or the year before, I guess, was the first year that we had been together since the pandemic. And then this year we pivoted to an online auction. And then we also did something for any of like the venture community folks that are listening. In lieu of doing a gala last year, we actually hosted what we called Get Up to Good Day, which was a day of service that we piloted in New York for the venture and tech community. And so it was an opportunity for emerging companies that were maybe like in the very beginning stages, as you were talking about, of thinking about giving back. It was an opportunity for them to come to a networking event with other companies of their size, of their maturity level, and give back to the New York community. So it was awesome. We had about 80 volunteers, I think 7 companies. We supported, I think, around 10 nonprofits with various service opportunities. And we're doing it again this year on May 16th, and we're hoping to double the number of volunteers that we had from last year. So any venture folks listening, whether you're a VC and want to push this out to your portfolio companies, or if you are a small emerging company with under 20 people and looking for a high impact way to both volunteer but also network with other companies of your size, give us a shout.
Okay, absolutely. Is there a link to like a sign up sheet? Any information?
We'll have that. We'll have it all on our website soon. We just solidified the date, and Lair Hippo was a wonderful sponsor of us last year, and so they'll be co-sponsoring this year again. And we've got some other folks are already eagerly signed up, so we're excited. And if this continues to be successful, our goal would be to replicate this in other cities as well, as a day to bring kind of the venture emerging tech community together for a day of good and giving back in a high impact way. Right.
And you said May 16th.
May 16th. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Well, Jessica, we could talk for a very long time. What is your let's say your parting wisdom, to, again, that tech founder, that entrepreneur who, has this, core value of doing good while doing well. what would you say to them, as they're thinking about starting a company or they've started their company
Yeah.
and they're in their early aughts, and they just want to do good? Like, what would
I
you
think
say to them?
oftentimes it could be really intimidating for small companies that are just starting out because they are so focused on getting the company started and profitability and all the things that we know are necessary for, emerging startup companies. And so I think our words of wisdom is to not, if you recognize that this is important and that there's a need and a desire to be a purpose-driven company, one, because you want to benefit your community, but also you recognize all the benefits it's going to bring to your business down the road, to not be intimidated by the not having budget or things like that. There are so many creative ways that you can give back to the community. It doesn't, that doesn't involve like massive investments to start, but to get sort of your feet wet, whether it's, finding an org like us, and participating in like a Get Up to Good Day for starters, whether it's, having a small opportunity for doing acts of service within the company, whether it's, even just acknowledging like a survey or the causes, or asking employees to raise their hand and share out things that are important to them. Really just start small, and you have the opportunity to grow, but it doesn't have to be the sort of, like overwrought, overcomplicated. There's so many ways that you can benefit the community, and the need is just tremendous right now. As you said, giving is down for, I think, the third year in a row. Nonprofits are struggling for both financial support, but also in cases where they don't have their internal resources, skill-based volunteering is critical. So if you have folks on your team that are great at marketing or data or finance or legal or things like that, there's so many different ways that you can support your community as you're emerging and starting out and sort of thinking about those things, to not be intimidated by like the end goal, but just think about something small that you can do. And every act of kindness, every act of generosity truly does matter, both for the employees and for the companies. And so again, don't prescribe to that myth that you have to be this like, Fortune 500 company or, part of the 1% to make a difference. There's so many ways that each of us can do it on a daily basis.
100%. You could not have said it better. As I like to say, you're raised by us. You're trying to democratize giving back, charitable giving, amplifying and energizing employees at organizations that want to make an impact in the communities that they serve. This is absolutely tremendous. Jessica, I really do appreciate your time, the insights, the conversation. I'm going to include, links to Raised by Us's website, awesome. Links to find Jessica on social media if you have any questions. Again, this is an incredible conversation. We'll keep this conversation going.
Absolutely.
Especially when we publish this episode. So really do, for the people who are going to tune in, you're going to take away a lot of great nuggets that you can bring back to your organizations.
Awesome. And thank you, Eric, for, having this podcast and bringing light to this super important topic. There's so much to talk. We could talk for hours. So I appreciate you giving us the chance to talk about the work that we do, and just grateful for you to even creating the space to have this conversation.
Well, I very much appreciate it. That's a great way to start the weekend.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for joining this episode of the Worthy for 30 podcast. Stay tuned for more insights from impactful business leaders. Don't miss out. Follow us on all podcast platforms to catch every conversation.